And we're back for Roundtable 2. By the time we're recording this, the first one hasn't come out, so it could be a total failure, and this would be the last episode. We don't know yet. We got 2 returning, 2 new, and then myself. Change up a little bit how we did our last episode. Hopefully, we'll create more discussion, or it could create the same awkward silences. We'll find out. Thing of the roundtable, everybody brings the movie. Doesn't matter what the movie is, but everybody has to watch it. And this is kind of, like I said, I wanted to do a show different than YLS, because YLS, all I do is tear people down for their opinions on movies. This one, I'm going to politely tear people down on their movies. No, if it didn't work for you, you're allowed to say it didn't work for you. But I don't want to make anybody feel stupid for picking a movie because they wanted to have, talk about it. I'm going to introduce my movie, then I'll go around everybody. I picked Night of the Hunter. So black and white movie, classics, and it wasn't directed by Billy Wilder. So suck it, Zach. Next up is Brian. How are you doing tonight? And what film did you bring?
Doing pretty good. I do object to that opening though. A lot of those tables were rectangular or square. Just saying. No, I brought Out of Sight this time. Steven Soderbergh's 1998 film. I think it's one of his best films, but I think it's another one of those that just gets overlooked. I think a lot of people haven't seen it. I know I looked it up on like his Letterboxd popularity. It's like below Side Effects and Unsane and some things like that, which is just crazy to me. So I wanted to talk some more about it.
Next up is Scott. Scott, what 2010 movie did you bring us this time?
I didn't. I didn't. Am I really that biased towards the 2010s? I don't know, maybe. It is when I grew up and started watching movies.
It's what I know you for mainly, but no, I know you can branch out. I know you like other movies.
When you grew up.
I went way back from before the 2010s to 2007 and picked a film called Rocket Science. Yeah. It's a coming-of-age comedy. I feel like most people probably aren't familiar with it unless you watched my top 100, in which I had it in there. And so I want to, kind of continue to boost the profile by making people watch it. Although, actually, I think Zach and Brian had both already seen it. So I found two people who had actually already seen it. But I still think it'll be a fun one to talk about.
Can't believe you picked a movie 1 year before Iron Man came out. This is crazy. My enemy in this community, Zach Ford, but I really wanted Zach on this because I feel like, one, he's great with either creating awkward silence or killing the awkward silence by talking for everybody. Zach, how are you doing, and what did you bring?
I'm doing good. I did come under false pretenses because from the video buff, there's just like lots of food involved, and there's no hors d'oeuvres, no snacks. This is some bullshit. You should have mailed us.
You bring your own. You bring your own.
Mail those canapes.
And I brought Paper Moon, the Peter Bogdanovich movie. One, he's died recently, so nice time to revisit. But also, I never visited it in the first place. It's the first time watch for me. I'm the brave one on the panel to pick one I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I'm really glad you did that, because I knew somebody at some point was going to do that, and I didn't know it was episode 2, but I'm really excited about it because I think that's like the biggest risk reward. Like, oh, I've heard great things, but am I gonna like it? We'll find out. And Mark, the man that talks way too much for this entire community, he never shuts up. Mark, how you doing tonight, and what'd you bring?
I'm doing very well. I brought the 2010s movie. It's a movie directed by, I had it pulled up. It's like I brought in Spring. I don't know if many people heard about it before. I thought I really wanted to bring it on because this movie to me was a very fun first viewing, and I don't want to say too much about it other than that. And I kind of wanted to bring something to the table that I feel like maybe a couple of people hadn't seen, and just kind of get their thoughts just fresh off of something like Spring.
Yeah, we'll have those conversations, but we're going to wait for a little bit later on the show. The first one, I think we're just going to start with. It may be because I'm the host or what, but we're going to talk about Night of the Hunter first. We're going to just bring Night of the Hunter out. I know if you saw it before. I know some had never seen it before. Charles Lawton directed it. I think this is his only movie too that he directed. Like, now that's just crazy to me, because I remember watching it and it sat with me for a long time, because I never gave it 5 stars. I gave it 4.5, and I sat there for a really long time like, why did I give this 4.5 stars? Because I love this movie and I've talked about it a lot. So I wanted to put it on there so rewatch. What is everybody else's initial thoughts on Night of the 100? What did you know about it before? Or did you know anything prior, or just go from there?
Honestly, I had seen it before, supposedly, because I logged it, but I didn't remember anything about it. Honestly, whenever I think of this movie, I get it mixed up with Cape Fear, the Robert Mitchum version of it. So I basically went into it mostly with a first-time viewing for me.
Yeah. I've seen it before also, and remember enough, I was excited to revisit it. I'm excited you picked it, because it is a perfect movie and such a important, it gets listed as like one of the best debuts of all time, and probably is the best one and done films. Just an interesting artifact to examine, as someone who just came and made one movie, how to do something so perfectly on the first time. So happy to watch it again. Yeah.
This was a first time watch for me, but certainly not the first time I heard of this movie. Like Zach, I've heard that, this is one of the, it's honestly appears high on a lot of movie lists of just greatest movies of all time, period. So it was, kind of intimidating prospect in that regard. It falls in like the Southern Gothic kind of subgenre, which is something that I really strikes a chord with me. So it was one of those that I always wanted to watch, but I wanted to make sure I like set the right moment to watch it so that I could fully appreciate it. So I'm glad that I got the initial push here to finally do that. By putting it on the show.
I had never heard of this movie. I'm pretty. I would say for the most part, like I can be kind of blank on a lot of classic films, and this one was just. I thought cool. I'm always up for a noir. I'm always up to watch some like kind of dark thing, and to be honest, like I guess we'll get into it later. It just. This one like went to places I didn't think it would go, and I was very much there for that.
Yeah, and on that point, Cody was mentioning that it was the only film that Charles Lawton directed, and actually the reason for that, if you read into it more, is because it was not well received at all at the time, and he was so sort of like disappointed and disillusioned with what the reception of it was that he didn't want to direct again. But I actually think some of that is because of what Mark is mentioning, that like it was very ahead of its time, like in terms of the cinematography
film.
Yeah, in terms of the cinematography in that one regard, and it just unsettles you in a way that maybe people weren't quite ready for in the time period that it came out.
I mean, at the very beginning, it just kind of throws you off. I mean, because it has like that child song at the beginning that feels very melodic, feels very soothing, and then you hear what they're singing about, and you're like, "What the hell is it? What's going to happen here?" Like that already kind of initially threw me off.
It's also, definitely fighting against a lot of taboos. That is probably why it wasn't so received, because it, there's violence towards children insinuated through the whole time. You never enacted it, but it's hinted. That's the whole, crux of the movie. There's a lot of sexual comments that I don't remember from the first time, and how really blunt it is with some of the sexuality of the film, which for the early 1950s, it's like, woo! Can't believe, or mid 1950s, can't believe they got away with some of these dialogue points. So it was, as we said, ahead of time. So it probably rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Also, going against having a priest as a lead character and being something so villainous probably definitely isolated some of the audience as well.
I mean,
yeah, I think the 50s for sure, of like what they target, like they use some like hymns throughout this and like make it into like a creepy manner of how like. I just think the one thing about this movie is how short the movie is, but how much suspense is able to be like brought to your attention in 90 minutes of runtime. Like Robert Mitchum, I think it just has like this presence on screen that is like fearful, and like even when he's like polite and like saying what he needs to, how big of a scumbag, like how creepy he is on the, like when he's talking to the people in the diner and like they're like talking about like her I knew it from the honeymoon, and they're like, oh, what did Satan, and like he's just able to paint this picture and make everybody on the side. But yeah, I never knew that about Charles Lawton. I knew he directed one. I knew there was a reason. I just never knew why was the reason he didn't. And that makes perfect sense. Like, he literally, for his first movie, just went out there and took a bat to basically, like, things that people held dear. Like, and he's like, we're going to talk about this in this way.
Well,
and it's a great way.
yeah, it's interesting though, because I think if you actually look at like all the religious stuff in the movie, like it's maybe not as subversive as people as you would originally think. Like, again, yes, you do have Robert Mitchum's character who is the preacher and whatnot. But then you have the other character who the silent actress, I can't think of her name, but who shows up that plays the woman towards the end that takes in the children, who is like the ideal like Christian figure in the movie, and in the end it's like almost still promoting a certain form of Christianity, of religion in a way, but it's just wanting to acknowledge people who are more faithful and who are more who adhere more to what Christianity or religion, whatever, should look like, rather than people like Robert Mitchum who are consumed by greed and everything.
What I think is very interesting, it kind of foretold the very near future, because this is like right before like televangelism became a huge thing, and then lead up later to like mega churches. But this is very much about like true faith versus like con artist faith, and he is the con artist and televangelist, and people when they're for their own good, using religion to make their own needs, versus I think still having very sincere belief by the end of the film with Lillian Gish's character as being a true woman of Christ, and she was the true faith, enacting the morals, taking care of all these kids, rather than just the verbiage. She was Christianity in action versus words.
So one thing I want to touch on, especially about this movie, I'm not one that really normally cares or like doesn't boost up my score a lot for like how a movie's shot or what it looks like or how they're like that stuff. That's just stuff I don't care. We talked about this last time with Columbus. Like, there's a lot of visual stuff that went there. It just didn't hit for me as much. This is one that I found more and more like the way he shot this and the way like he's able to like draw the tension. Like, there's a scene where the kids are like laying in the barn and the horse, and you just hear the music playing, and he's like, doesn't I ever stop? Like, and they have to keep going. Like, I felt like how they were able to tie. I thought also when they're like on the porch where she's like guarding the porch, and like the shot and the song that's being played, and like how the cameras work. I think that's one of the coolest shots in the entire movie. Like, I think that's like the whole like one of the scenes is like he's just waiting outside basically and singing that song, and she's like guarding watch. I thought it was like well, I guess my main question is like, what did you guys think about how the movie was shot and how it looked? I don't know how everybody feels about that stuff. Maybe they may be completely different than what I am on that. Like, I don't really care much, but this is one that I started noticing and caught more of. And I guess maybe it was the 50s, the classics. Like, that's just they had less to work with what we got now, so what they were able to achieve is impressive to me.
Yeah, I don't love this film as much as you guys did. I think I was not. It didn't work as well for me, but I will say that I did like a lot the way a lot of things were shot. Like I said, it kind of had, like Scott mentioned, it had kind of that Southern Gothic look to it. And the one shot that really stood out with me was when you saw the car with the woman underwater and her hair was flowing in the current and stuff.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful shot.
It's insane the way that they were able to pull that kind of a shot off in the time period that it was made, 1955 or whenever this came out. Yeah, like the underwater shot is like, I was like, wow, like that. That would look cool today, like if you were able to do that.
And at this point, it was black and white by choice. Like, color was available and an option. And just definitely using a lot of the noir techniques of using the black and white to really create shadows and mysterious tension. And I think a lot of us have all different shots that we have shared so far, and that says a lot about how great the cinematography and use of cameras in the movie, that we all took away with something different. I am like partial to rivers and movies. I just really like rivers. I think there should be a river in every movie. So my favorite shot is the kids on the boat and their escape, and that's to me was like the most Southern Gothic because you get this, get the frogs and you feel like you're in like the bayou or something. As it's also just scary because you don't know what's to come for them. This is like them becoming refugees in a way, escaping onto this river. and it's perfectly dark. You don't see enough, but and you also have to use the sound and just have those animal noises kind of in the background to kind of create this a little bit of like a lost feeling, like a lost in the wild. These kids out on their own. That's my favorite part of the movie.
And I will say I'm glad that part did look so good and create that sense of dread, because I got to say that trip down the river felt like it took an half an hour. Just saying.
That's why it's great. It should have been an hour.
So it's at least visually interesting.
I liked it as a pause and as a transition. I think the rest of the movie to being them at home and being tense versus the escape from him.
You know, I didn't want to say one quick thing. I honestly came in here a little bit, kind of wanted to complain at least a little bit about the movie making stuff about this. Although you guys did kind of bring up some good points about the cinematography, I still will lay into the editing stuff. Like that could just be stuff that just maybe isn't super figured out by the 50s, because there are some scenes that kind of went back and forth. And honestly, there was a shot that it's not for like a good reason, because like it was right when the kids escaped, and it was like. And we see like Mitchum chasing the kids up, and he has like his Frankenstein hands out there, like chasing them. And it looked like it looked really strange. I'm like, this is a really odd choice. I don't know why we went there. It was
the guy's a big body. I don't know how athletic he is. It's hard to control big, rigid body.
He's pretty stiff. I did want to go to Mark for a second, because Mark, you said there's a lot of stuff that they did in the time, and this is spoiler free. So spoilers, so you can talk about it. What were you surprised that they did for the 50s that you just didn't think that they would actually?
I mean, I was really surprised, like just overall how dark the film was. I think just really threw me off. The fact that honestly, just as a whole, the Robert Mitchum character is so creepy and unsettling. And I get it. This is like Depression era America, but he still decided to marry a woman and be like a father to the children and kind of become a man of this community for $10,000. Like, how psychotic do you have to be to like just go through these steps just for some money?
I mean, for that time, 10 grand is 10 grand. Like, that's crazy money.
That seems like a lot better way to make money than him like picking vegetables on the farm. You're saying he'd rather like sleep in bed with a woman and like have a whole town love him? It's not worth $10,000.
And then after the kids fucking escape and they're going down the river and he's still going after them. He's still like T-1000 in his way to the kids. I'm like, is this guy ever gonna stop?
My thing is why the kids kept like putting up with it, because like after he'd already like threatened to kill him and pull the knife on him and stuff, they'd still like hang around and go out to dinner and sit at dinner table, and at the end, of course, when they the girl runs to him and stuff, I'm not buying this stuff at all. But it's just I'm not sure why the kids weren't creeped out by him. I mean, clearly they were, but they stuck around. I don't know.
I think there's definitely some like trauma that the kids are facing. That's what the last like shot is really signaling at, where he's like seeing his dad all over again while Robert Mitchum is getting arrested, and he's like going back to like, I don't want him arrested either, because there's trauma of like seeing a man arrested in front of me. So when you experience different things, you're willing to accept different parts of your life.
I get what they're going for there with him seeing his dad, but his dad never tried to kill him with a knife. Just saying.
You don't know that.
As far as we know.
That way, yeah. So it seems like I don't know. I think three of us are on the positives, like this movie a good amount. I think maybe two are on the fence. Or I know Brian didn't like it as much. Mark, where do you lie on this? Like overall,
I think overall, I still like the story quite a bit. The like just kind of the turns it takes, and I really enjoy even when the story's kind of on its hinges. I really like whenever I'm going into when we're halfway through the second act and I don't know what's going to happen. And that happened pretty by the 45-minute mark. I had no idea what's going to happen. I was on the fence on whether or not both kids were going to make it out or not. So
completely fair. So for Zach and Scott, did anything not work for you in the film that you just didn't like about it, or did it all work for you?
I do love the movie. I do think it falls into the 1950s trap at the end of getting like a little over your head with its moralism. The Lily Gish character is a little, I don't know, strong in that like trying to correct the taboos of the rest of the movies. Like we're not really thinking this. We're gonna have this very moral, perfect character that shows what our real signs are, and it's a little bit of an easy way out. And a little I don't know the word I'm trying to think of. It just gets a little more boring with what she's trying to say. She could have been more dimensional character, but I do think it's still like a perfect movie other than that, and I kind of forgive it because that's just kind of part of making movies at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to kind of say a similar thing, which is that, you know, it could have gone further, which would be with the whole, you know, religious critique type angle, which would have made it, you know, even more interesting for the era, I think. I mean, ultimately, I like personally, like I agree with what the movie kind of is saying. So you know, I find it hard to critique that too much, but it still would have been fascinating to see it go even further and not present someone like the Lillian Gish character, who, yeah, is a little bit one note in terms of, yeah, she's a trope. She's kind of a trope, like the, you know, stern but good-hearted, you know, very faithful, you know, woman who they just happen to serendipitously come across here in the same, you know, area that they live. So that's the only thing for me. And it's not like a super rewatchable movie or something if you care about that, for me at least. But otherwise, I mean, it's phenomenal.
I think it's rewatchable.
I agree with you. So overall, yeah, I'm kind of ashamed that I could imagine what Charles Lawton could have done with other films. Like I think he had clearly in this movie, you could tell like he had the ability to be a director. It was just the wrong time for him. So I guess we'll just go around and get everybody's score, like what you guys would have given this movie. I'm up to a 5. It's 5. I love this movie. I thought it was great. I enjoyed everything about it. We'll go to Zach next.
I give it a 10 out of 10, which is a 5. I don't believe in half stars.
Fair enough. Scott?
4.5. Loved it.
Okay. Mark?
Okay, to annoy Zach, I'm going to give it a 3.75 out of 5.
That's not a thing.
On Letterboxd, 3.5? Okay.
3.5 on Letterboxd, okay.
Hold you till 3.5. And Brian?
You know that most of it was the acting was a little over the top for me. I ended up going with a 2.5. I do want to make one side note. The kid who played John, if you've ever seen Mickey Mouse era Ryan Gosling, dead ringer. Just saying.
So far on the show, 2 for 2 with giving Brian a 2.5 star movie. I'm really impressed with myself.
Men of Honor and Night of the Hunter apparently on the same quality.
equal movies. All right. So again, there's no rhyme or reason why I decide what order we're going to go to, but I'm going to go to Rocket Science next.
Okay.
Scott, kind of why did you pick this overall, and then we'll talk about our initial thoughts on it after that.
Yeah, so like I was saying up front a little bit, you know, it's one of like the most obscure movies that's in my personal top 100, if not the most obscure movie. I came across this movie. So just to describe sort of what the movie is, it's set in a high school, and it's specifically set in the world of high school debate. And it's about this kid, Hal, who has a stuttering problem, who ends up getting recruited by Anna Kendrick as a girl named Jenny, who is like the champion debater of the school and like super type A personality, talks a million miles an hour like a Sorkin character. And she seemingly inexplicably at first recruits him to join the debate team, even though he has this crippling defect, which you know allows him to, which prevents him from being a smooth public speaker. I, you know, as I have talked about before, you know, have participated in mock trial, public speaking type stuff since I was in high school. And am still a coach, you know, still very much part of that world. It's something that's very personal to me that I relate to a lot. So debate is not quite the same thing, but the personalities are the same, and like this world is kind of the same. And so just like the scenes of them like at the tournaments, and they're carrying the, you know, cases around full of their research and everything, and they're wearing suits, and it's you know, all of that stuff just like is really like personal to me because that I have so many memories of that sort of thing. So I love that there's a movie set in this world because there's just not many stories that get told in this world. So that's one of the reasons I picked it. I also think the movie is hilarious, honestly. Like I know maybe not everyone's style of humor. It's kind of a Wes Anderson-y like
It's very
type
Wes
of
Anderson,
movie in
yeah.
general, but the supporting characters in this movie are just like hilarious. Some of them are just like so random. The kid who's like they encounter who just lives across the street from Anna Kendrick's home, like the weird stuff that he gets up to is funny. Judge Pete, who is like the stepdad type character, hilarious. Again, I think it's a really funny movie. I think it has a good message. I think it's realistic, honestly, in the way that it portrays his coming of age. It doesn't give you some big sports movie victory at the end, spoiler alert, but it does give you a sort of catharsis that I think makes sense for the character. And so, I mean, I absolutely love this movie. In rewatching it again, I was like, yeah, I still don't get why this movie is like just basically doesn't exist. People just don't really know about it. It feels like anymore. But that's one of the reasons I picked it.
So I'll just go. My initial thought is I had no clue about this movie. Had zero thoughts. I didn't watch a trailer or anything. I was a freshman around that time frame when this movie came out. I never heard of it. Never even popped on my radar. I saw, Jonah Hill and Anna Kendrick. I'm like, oh, this is weird. I'd never heard of that. So I had no initial thoughts going into it. I'll share my opinions, but anybody else have any real initial, like, did anybody know about this movie? I guess two people did, because Brian and Zach, you guys watched it previous?
Yeah. I seen it in 2007. I was a freshman in college. I watched it on DVD. I think probably because it did get so much like Wes Anderson comparisons, or just kind of a lot of these, or no, Baumbach, a lot of these indie comedies I was just kind of really get into, as most like 18-year-olds at liberal arts school probably do get into. So it seemed right up my alley. I will say at my initial viewing, I remember being extremely disappointed with what it did. By the time I rewatched it, I had no memory why. So it was nice to revisit it and kind of re-battle with those opinions and ideas.
Yeah, I just watched the first time, I don't know, in the last couple of years. And I think it's because I was, looking for like Anna Kendrick movies, basically. So kind of going back through her filmography. And this one I had picked up at the used DVD store for like $1. So I finally sat down and watched it. And kind of like he was saying, I remember not loving it, but liking it. And I rewatched it this time, and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit more. I think I do have some problems with it, which I'll get into later, but I really did enjoy it. And I liked seeing not only her, but I mean, you saw that Ukarsh, who has been really Pitch Perfect and stuff like that. Nick DeGasto, who I know from like Fired Up and Final Destination.
Margot Martindale.
Yeah, Margot Martindale. So it's got a great cast all across.
Yeah. I had never heard it. Again, I'd never heard of this movie, and I find it weird just because these movies, especially high school me, I was really into these type of movies. The kind of weirdo high school kid, doesn't no direction, doesn't really like, and he finds something kind of interested in, or he gets pushed into, usually from either just vain interest in what he's getting into, usually a girl. I ate that shit up when I was in high school. Although I gotta tell you, if I saw this in high school, it would have bummed me the fuck out. Like I'll just be right out there and say it. I mean, one thing I found funny was Reese Thompson was the kid who I'd only seen in Perks of Being a Wallflower and like a stupid assassination of a high school president. Love that movie, by the way. Might bring it up in a future episode if I get asked back. But
actually, I looked him up and I was like, I because he was really good in this movie. And so I'm like, well, what else has this kid done? And I saw he was in all these other movies like Perks of Being a Wallflower. I didn't remember him in those movies that I saw. So I don't know. I guess it just never really took off.
I mean, I do want to bring up something that, Scott, you already brought up when you kind of thought it had a nice message. I kind of want to know what you think that is, because to me, the point of this movie is that there is no message. Because the crux of this seems to be that we're going to do an anti-coming-of-age film. Where...
Yeah.
Like that's what we're doing here.
We'll unpack that in a second. So the one thing is, I think there are people. I like this movie more than I thought I would. I will just say that right now. I did. So this is one of those movies that creates a world that makes you like feel like so uncomfortable while it's like for this character at times. Like this is the most real, like one of the most real coming of age, but not coming of age movies that I've seen in a really long time because they don't he doesn't like get his comment like he doesn't like make this big gradual change and like he's a great like debater at the end of it. No, he sucks throughout the entire thing. He can't do it. He got tricked by this girl because he thought she was
now.
Well, I mean, he does, but but that's my viewpoint. Like, he's still like got bamboozled, but in getting bamboozled by this girl, ends up changing his life and helping him out of a situation. But this movie made me like super uncomfortable in like just I guess the correct way because I'm like this poor guy like is just when the 8-minute counter and they're timing him and he's just having a rough time. And then he's sitting across, like, there's that scene where he's sitting across the table and he's like, "Oh, I'm just telling him how much you love debate." I can't, it's full. It's like, no, somebody bombs out. They always let somebody join in. He's like,
how about when he tries to do the accent? That was,
yeah.
that amazing
No, I get
down and dirty.
This movie should be on like my lower end, but I was hooked the entire time watching it. I had fun watching it the entire time because I think this movie holds like such a true way of doing this kind of story that most ones like oh, the geeky kid becomes a football player and he's the greatest athlete alive. Like this one just stayed true to what it was. Like he gets more confidence, but he still can't do the thing that he was really doing.
It
like
doesn't have that traditional like happy ending. It's like it's totally anticlimactic actually because like you get to the big debate and you get disqualified. Okay, wait, what?
Which I loved because I think if he would have cheated, it would have went down for me. But since it like stayed true. Yeah, like when he opens that door, like at the end, like when he opens the door at Anna Kendrick, basically, and just like stumbles through everything, basically, but like, and just walks out and she's talking back. He's won at that time, basically, at that point. But I don't want to talk too much. Again, this is a movie I didn't think I would like, but I actually really did come around and enjoy it. So I'm glad Scott brought it in because I thought I would never have saw this movie in the end.
When I say it had a nice message, I don't mean to say that it was like heartwarming. I mean to say that I liked where the direction that it goes in the end. And I mean, the last scene, right, is with him and his dad, and he's trying to say, that all this stuff shouldn't be rocket science, but he can't actually say rocket science, and it's kind of like a metaphor for. I mean, again, he's basically trying to say that like these coming of age, love, these ideas are like simple ideas, but they are really hard in practice. And it's hard to explain why they are so hard in practice, just like it is hard to explain why he cannot order the piece of pizza instead of the fish from the lunch when he wants to every time. It's like there are these roadblocks that we can't really explain why they are in the way, but they are, and they are very hard to overcome. And he can slightly overcome it by being able to order the pizza or by actually getting through a intro to his debate by singing. But like the hard part is still to come, and we don't know whether he is going to be able to overcome that. And as a character, I find him fascinating too, because even though we should be like 100% empathetic rah with him or whatever, he's kind of like a hard character to fully connect with, Hal, because he's still like immature in the way that he reacts to a lot of these situations.
I love the pizza scene at the end or near the end. That's very important for me to say near the end. I wish it ended on that scene because that's where it ended with a point that was the interesting part of the movie, or the really moving part of the movie is him, that shows his growth. He accomplished something. He's able to, have more confidence and speak up a little bit, if not debate, but take more control and power in his life. And I just love the little joke of like the fist pump after he gets his pizza and that bit of pride. It would be a great moment to end it. Now, my big issue with this movie, this is a very frustrating movie for me because there's a lot of things I like. I love the tone, and I want to talk about the music a little bit later. I talked to Scott before about like movies where good soundtracks can fool you into thinking you like this movie better, because like some parts I'm like, do I like this movie? But like then I think about it and there's so much frustrating, but I really just like the songs and the use of the songs. but because what's really frustrating, and I want other than like the Anna Kendrick character, it's extremely frustrating, but also the ending like loses the priority of the movie. It's like this isn't a movie about gaining confidence in yourself and coming of age. It's really about love, which is like why even have it in debate at that point? It's really about how to deal with, romance as a teenage and trying to figure out girls and that whole conversation of that, rather than having anything to do with the speech impediment or what the rest of the movie was seemed like it was focused on it. And it makes you really look at the film in a different way, in a much less interesting way, since that's like saying this is the thesis of the movie if they're ending with it. And I just want to say with that too, rocket science, that makes me even think more it's a thesis because it's named after that conversation. It's really about how dealing with girls is rocket science you're never going to figure out. A much more boring topic. It's a horrible fucking title. It should be like a science Olympiad then. It has nothing to do with the movie. It should have been a debate-related title. It's nothing to do with the quality of the movie, but it's a bad title.
I mean, I don't disagree.
That's why you bring Zach, because he brings the logic. He brings the logic.
I don't disagree that it definitely could have ended with the pizza scene, and that was like my reaction the first few times I watched the movie. Now I've kind of learned to appreciate the last scene. I don't think he is solely talking about like your relationship with girls and everything in that final scene. I think he's talking about like the process of coming of age in general. But yes, it does sort of dilute the. But I mean, there is a running thread through the movie about like relationships, not just him and Anna Kendrick, but like what he is seeing with his parents, who like the movie basically opens up with them splitting up. And then we have like the Judge Pete relationship, which is like just ridiculous. And the movie ends up with the relationship is ending in the same way, basically, with Judge Pete like leaving in much the same way that his dad leaves in the beginning of the movie. So
that makes me think it's more about that's the theme of the movie because the book ends.
That's
with
part of it, but
and the relationship with his brother felt real too. I like the way he did with his brother. So I mean,
and I like
across the board. I liked
with his brother. Yeah, I like the scene where like he's just like he's kind of a bully to him the whole time, but then there's like the one human moment or whatever where he really sees that Hal is like fully going through it, and he's like, there's cake in the fridge or whatever it is he says to him or whatever. It's like the one nice act that he performs towards in the entire movie, and it just like it humanizes the character like just ever so slightly.
I mean, I just want to finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of echo a lot of that too, because because essentially in that final conversation, he's trying to reach out to his dad, trying to get some life advice. Like, is this ever gonna get easier? And his dad is like, I don't know if I can get you home, son. I got lost. I lost my Google Maps, and the kid's just getting nothing. Like, I mean, it's staying true at least to the we aren't even going to give this kid even kind of a win. They couldn't even give him a round one debate victory, and they were like, yeah, and especially talking
ordering the pizza was a win.
I mean, he went to a pizza shop where they only had cheese pizza. What the hell else was he going to order?
He said it though. It's not getting the pizza. It's that he said it.
Because he does make the joke like you don't have fish. Like I can't get fish.
Yeah.
I'm in the camp that I wish it would have ended on the pizza scene. I thought that was like finally, and then it carried on. But the whole time I was watching this, I was thinking again. I don't know what I looked it up earlier, but I don't know exactly what the director has done. But I got very Wes Anderson.
Also with Anna Kendrick, which I actually love that movie. If you haven't seen Table 19, check it out.
Oh, okay. I enjoyed the movie. I sat there the entire time and got like some Wes Anderson vibes the entire time, and I sat there halfway through the movie and I was like, something in me is telling me I can't like this movie right now where it's good because it was very Wes Anderson like. But I think this is like the subject matter that just like just worked for me overall. I thought, like I said, I think this is one of those coming of age / not because it's so weird. Like I don't know how to even. It is a coming of age movie, but like it's just no. I think that how real it felt the entire time is what made me hook into it, and I wish more coming of age movies had those realistic things like this one did. Like. Because I think like a lot of the frustrations, like Mark's even saying, like give this kid something. Like this kid's life is so rough at this point. But like, I think that just makes it as true. Like some that's the coming of age story that some people need, because some kids just don't get the comeuppance, don't get the better life.
That life
where
doesn't
they're
get
going.
better, so just give up, be average.
No, I'm not saying give it up, but hey, if my kid comes in here singing one day and they're tone deaf, I'm like, hey, maybe not singing, but maybe you could be a chess player. I don't want to hear that the entire time. So if my kid struggles,
you have to appreciate the small victories, because there's always going to be some big thing in the way that like keeps you.
But what small victory? He had no small victory. There's nothing. You keep bringing up the pizza thing.
That is not true. He has three small victories.
He has three.
He is able to get through the debate. Second, he tells off Anna Kendrick like he has been wanting to, and third, he orders the pizza. All of those are small victories. Now, yes, all of them are equally juxtaposed, like I'm saying, with he sings through the debate, but then they get disqualified. Like, he tells off Anna Kendrick, but then he's like alone walking on the beach. He gets the pizza, but then he has to have this speech with his dad. Like,
I laughed really hard.
Us saying it's small victories, even labeling it that, is from our perspective as people who are able to speak somewhat clearly. I'm still struggling somewhat. To him, to the character, I feel like they make it seem like big victories, like his arm raising, doing a thing. That's like a huge accomplishment for something he's never been able to come from. So you just have to view it from the perspective of the character and not our expectations, like how people function.
I will say I laughed really hard when he opened that door and said, "I was killing it." Was I killing it? Like, I've heard worse. I've had worse. Like, that was like such a great.
I love the thing that Anna Kendrick's character does too, where like she does it a couple times, where she's like debating and she like walks towards the door and she like walks out the door and continues talking, but she like turns to him, but she like continues talking. She never stops talking.
Yeah, she loses, right? She spent like 2 minutes of her debate yelling at this kid. There's no way she wins.
Well, I gotta say,
she like yelled.
I said I watched this movie because of Anna Kendrick, but I actually thought she was phenomenal in this. I mean, even just in this early role, you could tell like she had the makings of a star, and it blows my mind that this is only 2 years before Up in the Air, and I love the
first scene on the bus where she just like tells off his brother, and is like talking about how based on how much my parents make versus your parents or whatever, I think the bus seat is actually substantially more mine than it is yours or whatever. Just like debates him out of the seat basically.
I don't say the one laugh out loud moment I had, because I know Cody mentioned his. It was when they were looking through the Kama Sutra.
Yes.
And the one kid says, "I tried this on my dog, but he wouldn't sit still, and he died a month later."
I want to make
that kid is just so random. Want to see a bra?
I love that kid. I want to say a little thing about the kid. Although we're talking about Anna Kendrick, I want to say it's probably a good thing that this is kind of earlier in her career, just because one thing I really like about this movie was they didn't go out of their way to try to make Anna Kendrick's character likable. Like after the second half, they were like, "No, she's just kind of a piece of shit," and she's kind of
I kind of think that's an issue.
Sabotage this debate team, and she also doesn't really give a shit about the kid either. It's like she doesn't care about him at all.
Yeah, it's all a strategy.
I think that's a major problem with the movie. I like her performance with a character that is horribly written and horribly used, because there is some. Same with like 500 Days of Summer, some questionability of like this sad guy's life is affected by the devilishness of women. She's just like an evil woman that tricks him with love, and how all nice boys are tricked by evil, mean women. When he's like the real dick and throwing cellos through windows, and hers is not near as bad. But you're supposed to root for him, and they don't really give her much of a reason for any of her behaviors or explanation for what's going on, other than like maybe she switched schools so she can win because she destroyed this other team, which is just kind of a bad strategy. There's also like 30 other teams at this fucking tournament.
But she has the loss, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. Is she loses in the beginning because Ben Wexelbaum cannot complete his argument because he blanks out or whatever. So
what does that have to do with her plan?
Because she has to go to these links in order to get the win, basically, that eluded her. That's all. I mean, that's really her only motivation. which maybe
Yes,
is what you're saying.
There's other teams involved, so that's not a good strategy to make sure you win. Is take down.
But she's
this
getting
one
rid
team.
of the competition. I mean, we don't know the full context, I guess, of what
Yeah,
the
The
that's
rest
strength
suck.
of the debate teams in the
it's
region are.
a very stretch of a move for her to create, conflict for what they want the story to tell. I don't think it's a very natural conflict that was created whatsoever.
I mean, I think that speaks to her awfulness, that her plan makes no sense, and she does it anyway because she's kind of a terrible person.
Yeah, that's the issue. They just make her a terrible person and not a real person. They just make her the villain so you can root for this poor young boy.
Well, I don't think you fully root for him though. Again, to go back to my point, like
So I think this
antagonist, but
I think this
he's
one
a
is like
messier character.
I think some of this is meeting middle of the road for most people, but we'll find out. Anything else you want to bring up about rocket science before we get the scores for this one?
I will say the
Music's-
one thing
Go
that dragged it down for me a little bit. For a movie where the crux of the movie is all about debate, I've never participated in or watched debate like in schools or whatever. But it didn't even seem like anybody was debating. It just seemed like speed reading notes. It was annoying to listen to.
Yeah.
And it's like I can't see how you can convince anybody about anything because there's nothing you can't retain or.
It's a Kaleb Koho strategy.
It's like
It's
how it is.
It's just like let me speed read my thesis I wrote, and that annoyed me. So that just brought my score down a little bit. So,
but that's authentic. That is literally how high school debate is. There's a term.
I never watched high school debate.
It does seem like a horrible technique because no one can hear you. So how are you making your point?
Well, the judges that they have, at least in theory, are experienced enough to like be able to pick out the. But the idea is just that you do it as fast as you can, so you can get through. Number one, you can get through as many points as you want, and number two, so that the other team has a harder time responding to you.
I was more convinced by sharing clueless. Just saying.
And the style of your speaking approach, which they don't use.
That's why I didn't do it, because I think mock trial is better preparation for actual public.
That makes perfect sense because Koho did say he did debate before, and if you've ever debated him, he speed talks, and I think that's probably part of the debate. I was with Brian. I didn't bring that up, but I was with that because I didn't know much about high school debate, and I was just like, oh my god! Like as somebody that has to judge like FANZONE, I was like. Somebody started.
You imagine a FANZONE with just people just speed reading.
I was like, I lost you by Spider-Man. Like I was confused. So overall, my favorite part was when he was doing the song because I could follow that. So we'll get scores. We're going to start with Scott Harvey because you brought the movie. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a 5 out of 5. The only other moment I want to mention is when he goes to the laundromat to get Ben Wexelbaum, and he's like, "That's God doing your laundry back there." I love that scene.
I'm at a 3.5 on this one. 3.5. I enjoyed it more than I thought. So, Mark. Oh, you're pretty critical.
I mean, for the fact that I kind of just sitting with it more and more, I kind of love just how anti it is towards this entire genre. Even though, as a whole, I kind of want the cut and dry version of a coming of age movie more.
Yeah.
But just for what it's going with, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5.
Okay. Zach.
I've been wavering between 2.5 and 3.5 this whole conversation because like the 3.5 is like I love the music and it's like very rewatchable and I love it. I'll split the difference and give it a 3. I'll give it some points for how.
I thought half stars didn't exist to you. So.
No, it's a 7 out of 10 would be a 3.5. Thank you. I go do a 10-point score, so that's what we should think of. So I give it a 6 out of 10.
Brian, I think I let Brian go last twice, so I apologize for that. But Brian,
that's fine. No, I originally had it rated as a 3. This time I upped it to a 3.5.
Yeah, overall. So on the scale, I have a private list for a roundtable. I have them all ranked as I'm going through all the movies that I watched on here, and yeah, it's higher than Columbus. So that's we're at a plus.
It's close to 9.
Not a bad movie. I just overall just wasn't like that.
Compared those two movies to each other.
True. I think the next one, Yeah, I think it's the time to pull it out, and then we'll finish with the last two that I was a little bit more positive. Because again, I don't know anybody else how they feel. So the one I'm more positive on, I'm going to save for the end. This one we're just going to talk to the crux because I need to unpack this movie because I've been saying about what the fuck half the time watching this movie. We're going spring. We're going spring next. Spring is what we're going to talk about. Mark, you can go into it, and then we can just have our conversation.
You know, I had a feeling this was coming. Like if there was gonna be a movie that was brought up today that was not gonna hit with you, it would be mine. I had a feeling that was gonna happen, but you know, I came across this movie. I think it's like maybe like 7 years ago. I think I was just it was like 11 o'clock. Should have gone to bed, but I was like, you know what? I'll start a movie, see what happens. And it turned out to be Spring. And I had my mind blown that night. I didn't know what to expect. I just kind of heard like this faint comment of like it's kind of like a Linklater and Del Toro. Like what if one of their movies had a baby? It was such a weird comment I heard, and I thought, well, this could be interesting. And that's kind of what it was. I mean, it was so strange. I kind of love how it ends up at the end, basically just being about love. But let people go on from there.
So, first initial thoughts. I don't know. Brian's the only one that saw this previous. Did anybody else like know much about this movie prior to like?
I know the
Mark
directors,
Pickett?
Vincent and Moorhead. Like I'm familiar with them. I don't think I've actually seen any of their films, but I was familiar with them, but not actually with this specific movie.
Yeah,
Same for you, Zach.
Vincent Moore has had this reputation of these interesting, kind of low budget sci-fi filmmakers that have never really hit to the next level. But I think they kind of have cult fan base. A lot of people who are very interested in what they're doing. So I heard of this movie just from that, but knew nothing about the plot. Had no more interest in digging.
Brian, how did you discover this movie?
I actually belong to a different online forum, just kind of a a
trader
message board kind of thing, and they'd always have these things, or we'd always like recommend movies. Like everybody's supposed to recommend a movie, and everybody else watched it. Kind of like this kind of thing we got going on, but it wasn't a video chat. It was just a message board kind of thing, and yeah, somebody, I think during Halloween time or something, they're like, here's an unusual one. Try this one, and I knew nothing about it going in, and yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay, so I just want to. I'm really curious about what everybody else thought about this movie. This movie did not hit for me in the slightest. It just didn't. I a B movie would be the closest thing that I may have like where I put this movie at. Like, I think the acting is atrocious in this film. Like, if I had to be real, like that's where I started. I thought the guy, I don't know who he is. I didn't have the bother to look him up and see what he's doing.
Pucci.
I think he's awful. Like the stuff he tries to translate, and like if it's about love, I ain't getting it overall. But like there were elements that like drew me back in, but then threw me right back out of it. Like there were multiple things that ended up happening like that. I did laugh a few times, but I don't know if it was uncomfortable laughter or like I wasn't supposed to laugh at that point, but I laughed anyways. Like that's where it came from me. Overall, initial like before we get into like certain stuff, just your thoughts about the film. Like, were you guys more positive than me? I'm just curious where we're sitting.
I think I probably had some of the same issues as you, Cody. Like, I don't think that either of the two lead actors have a ton of charisma, and I think this is unfortunately a movie that depends a lot on the actors having charisma in order for it to succeed. Because, like Mark says, in the end, it is that the very last moment is supposed to be kind of an emotionally stirring moment of like a decision being made to choose love, quote unquote, and I did not feel that way because I didn't feel very much towards these characters. The Linklater comparisons, obviously it gets compared to like before trilogy, I guess, because of the nature of how they meet and everything. But I didn't find that the conversations were nearly as interesting as they are during the Linklater movies. They don't go as deep as Linklater. I mean, it's a high bar. It's like an impossible bar almost. But I felt like these were kind of just pretty one note, like guy writing conversation that you would have with after a serendipitous meeting between a man and a woman. It felt very like surface level, I guess is what I'm trying to say, the conversations that they were having. And I didn't feel they really went to an interesting place to where I saw them as more interesting people. So that was kind of my main issue. But I mean, I didn't hate it. It was interesting to watch. And you know, I appreciate what they were going for. It never fully came together.
I definitely see the comparisons, and I actually
Yeah.
I do think it felt very much like Before Sunrise. It was definitely going for that same kind of thing with this guy, meets this woman abroad, and the whole thing is basically just this daily conversations with her, and then of course there's like this kind of dark mystery, kind of just you're seeing little peeks of what's going on, and eventually it kind of explains itself. But it's funny because in my review on Letterboxd, I wrote, what the fuck did I just watch? Is this Before Sunrise meets Species? And then I look at later on, and one of the posters actually says it's Richard Linklater meets H.R. Giger. I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of what I just said. So it all worked out. But I mean, I don't think it's on the level of Before Sunrise, obviously, but I think it's definitely got that same vibe to it. And then, but I like that they kind of put a twist on it. It's like, let's do this kind of story, but in kind of a, I don't know, horror, I guess, kind of twist on it. And I kind of respect it for taking that kind of crazy shot.
I want to say a couple positive things before we all just start trash on the movie. I do really like the concept of the film, and which I think is what Benson and Moorhead make their money on, is they have these really interesting concepts, even if they don't execute it perfectly, or like it doesn't exist in a real world like they think it does. They want it to be like this Before Sunrise world, but there's so much artificiality and a lot of the side characters that they just don't realize are so one note and artificial. But the other thing, and this is a big disagreement with what the some of you have already said, is I actually really love the performance of Nadia Hilker. I think she's really great. I do agree that Taylor Pucci is not so what the script wants him to be, but I think she is seductive in the right way. She's mysterious in the right ways. She has just a little, I think, just the right level of sadness. You don't want to make her like too like freaked out by the situation, because she's been living with this for centuries and everything, but still there's a little bit of devastation for what her life is becoming, that she is. But I'm really enthralled by everything she's giving on the screen. But yeah, the other guy, it's not working because they really think that like this is such a good old boy. The script really thinks that this is like the best man he possibly can be. He's like just a little bit tough, stands up for himself in the bar, goes for his family, is smart enough to go to college. It has all these things that really make you think he's the perfect little man, but he's kind of a little ass still himself, and just not like romantic or seductive at all. And the whole end of the movie hinges on you believing in the relationship and the love between these two characters, and you can't buy it.
Give up everything for me.
Yeah, not because of Nadia Hilker. You have no reason why he can like persuade anyone to make these decisions in life, like, because he's kind of a dweeb.
Yeah, it's like they're in Italy. They're in Italy, right? And she is like, obviously this gorgeous woman. It's like, why would he be the guy that like can break her out of this thousand? It's kind of let down a little bit by its own. Like you would have really had to have someone special in that role probably to be able to pull it.
I will say the scene where
Avatar-ness, as in like this was an Avatar, I think, for Moorhead or Benson. There's like, this is my dream scenario. If I go to Italy and this demon girl changes her life for me, so I feel like they're just playing themselves.
Yeah, real quick, because like the start of the movie, I feel like they want you to believe like, yeah, he's like the struggling dude or whatever. Like he loses his job. But then he just like goes to Italy and is like, yeah, I'm just gonna stay here. Like I feel like that was just a little.
He wants Italy to run away from the law. Is what he's doing.
Well, yeah,
and I think that's where my biggest problem was. I think she's fine as an actress, no problem with that. I think if you're a male in this movie, you're garbage. Like I think overall, I didn't like any of the male performances. I think they're all terrible. But like the writing was the thing that, like, the cop shows up to his apartment. He looks out the window. And he's like, "Oh, my passport. Oh yeah, I can just travel wherever I want to." And then goes, he's in the bus or what, or on the ride, and goes, "Oh, anywhere. I'm hungover," and like looks at the lady next to him. "Where should I go?" What are we doing here? Like, he just lands on Italy, he just goes to Italy. He meets like the two most
the money to do this is my question.
right. He just meets the two. I really can't be unemployed, but I can afford Italy. He meets like these two guys of the most like welcoming men of all times. Like, "Come on, hang out with us. You're cool." Blah blah blah.
Oh, those dudes were actually pretty great though. The British,
I know, but like,
absolute
they're also
lads.
still kind of fucks. Everyone is a fuck boy in this whole movie.
Without a question, they are. That's what makes them entertaining to watch.
Every
absolute lads.
The part
I mean,
go ahead.
One of the notes I had was, I wonder how many of them are gonna have an issue with the big drunk guy.
The part where I was like, this guy's a terrible actor, and how is he in this role is what I thought. That's from Jump Street. And then when they get together and she wakes up, and I just see her face like doing the thing, and I'm like, holy because if you read because I didn't know much about it, because there's a dark secret with this person. I'm just like, oh fuck, of course it's fucking vampire something bullshit, and like she's like tweaking out in the middle of the thing. I was like, okay, well, Mark definitely picked the anti-Cody movie of the week. Here we go, because I am completely out at this point. Like, the one part that brought me back in was like when they were in the church or whatever. It was like, oh, the demon's doing heroin. Like, that part made me laugh. But overall,
well, the church was weird because it's like they had that scene like they're sitting there talking, and the tail kept popping up like it's sentient, like it's going to attack by itself.
Yeah,
it just felt like it was out of a different movie. You know, it's just kind of weird.
It decided to be a comedy when it wanted to be anything.
Yes, because he was just like, she was like, her face is turning, the tentacles behind him. And he's like, really, just stick yourself in the arm already. What the fuck? I was like, is this a comedy now? And then I'm going to be honest, the ending just pissed me off. Like this is my acceptance. The volcano's going off. They already foreshadowed like the stuff there is like, oh well, we'll just like, kiss my ass. I was
actually digging most of the movie. It was basically once he found out what she was, I kind of felt like the movie fell apart after that. It's like I
was going to say, yeah, I agree, but I don't on that. But I didn't hate it as much until he hated it more when he found out.
It's too complicated. Like, movies like this, I feel like are always better served by being just simpler and not getting lost in like the actual plot of it all. And really, again, it's going towards like the simple idea of choosing, love over everything, sort of like. And I just didn't feel like the convoluted way that they got there was necessary to give us that message.
I know where Luca got their idea for their movie now. Jeez, like Italy just turned into a creature.
Luca, the best Pixar movie of the past 10 years. Anyways, we'll do that for next episode.
Okay.
I think the ending could have been more effective if they made it more ambiguous, because they made it so clear cut that like they chose love. It becomes problematic in a way. If they make it more up to the viewer's opinion, then you can debate a little bit with the themes of the movie and the ideas, or just go super cynical and have it all as a dream sequence, and then they show him just like eaten up by her and just a corpse of blood everywhere.
Under the skin style.
I may have zoned out, but I just want to make sure we're on the. So they like break off their thing, and like he returns to her, and she's like turning into God knows what, and he helps her. That's your escape. You're already the fuck out, and he chooses. I know he chooses love, and that's the thing. If I walk in and I'm already broken up, and this is what's flopping on the floor, I'm leaving. Gone tomorrow. What?
Also, like, politically, some real like issue stuff with that idea of like a woman can change her being by the thought of love. Like, you can only get pregnant with love. Idea. So there's a lot of.
I would be back to jail in California tomorrow. Like, no problem whatsoever. Like,
true love is changing her whole biology and her emotions. Otherwise,
well, that's kind of my point. It's like the plot is just very. It's very lazily stitched together to like here's all the stuff we need in order to make the ending work. we're not going to like think about whether it makes a lot of sense or what the greater implications of it. It's just like it's almost MacGuffin-y in a way. Like it's just serving a purpose of getting us to the ending that we want.
And I want to say this movie did not hit for a lot of us, but that's the thing is like movies hit people completely different. I brought a movie on that I thought I was going to have like more people on my side because I enjoyed it when I was younger, and I was for a better part. Now I wouldn't say ripped apart, but they did not like Men of Honor last week, and that was fine. That's just where it ends up going. Like I would have never watched Spring if somebody doesn't bring it on the show. Now I've seen it. Will I ever watch it again? Probably not. But overall, it made an interesting conversation for like a lot of us because like some of us would not have seen it, some of us wouldn't looked at it, and isn't this the same guys that did Moon Knight? Are they the same group that did? Are they?
Yeah.
They did
part of Moon Knight?
At least one of them. Like,
also, an
directed a couple
interesting failure. I think that might be their career.
No, that's right. I don't know if Moon Knight was good or not. I haven't seen it, but I think some people like it.
Better than Ms. Marvel, that's for damn sure.
I don't like either of them.
Anything on Spring, Mark? We did talk about it and we beat the shit out of it pretty bad, but overall, just didn't hit for us. But anything else you want to touch on the movie?
I mean, I gotta admit, I'm sitting here kind of loving this. I mean, on some end, I did like it at the conversation.
Love to watch the world burn.
I mean, like
Littlefinger.
Listen, I have not come across another person who has seen this movie. So just any conversation on this movie is good for me. I'll take it. I mean, I do want to echo some things. I'm not going to sit up here and defend Lou Taylor Pucci's performance. I won't do that. I think you guys are kind of right. It's not super great. I mean, I think honestly the stuff that really hits for me is a lot of it's in that last 30 minutes and how it's not necessarily her making a choice because like she can't, like she kind of says in the movie, I can't make that choice, and it's not 100% on her. And it's just because I get in that, at least in her character, it's something that she's thought she's felt love before. She's not 100% sure she has. And then because she doesn't want to make promises to this guy that this is going to happen or not. And I just kind of love how it just kind of makes that slow transition to that point. And to me, I mean, I fucking love that ending where they're sitting at the bottom of that volcano and nothing happens to her. And like it's that little win. And even though like we kind of crushed this guy and having, I don't know, maybe didn't have a great life. I mean, come on, the cops are after him in 2 fucking countries. His mom just died from cancer. We can't get any sympathy for this guy. I don't know what he has to do for sympathy. But like he gets that one little win of like, okay,
not be a man.
He gets that one little win of, you know what, he's got this girl, and he has a chance at that one love, and I love that part. He was
just able to go up in Italy and just make a new life there. I think he's probably doing okay, whether or not he ends up with the girl or not.
Should just live on that farm forever. That guy seems cool.
Yeah, the farmer was great.
That and the way he wears his hat, that like MVP for the way he wears his hat.
I did wonder, like, does the farmer understand like 75% of the stuff that he's talking about? Like, does he give a damn about any of this?
No,
guy just pouring out his heart to it.
I mean, nothing connects this movie. The farmer's story and his wife has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. I thought this, this sets you up kind of like Midsummer, that this is gonna be like a movie about grief and someone overcoming their grief, and it really has nothing to do with the rest of the movie of him overcoming. He's seeing
that one man, like who he has that one, like he's seeing a guy who had that one love in his life, and then once it ended, kind of where his life had ended with the Angelo, with the farmer.
So you touched on something at the very beginning, and that's the whole reason why me and Tim like talked about doing this show. Is because the night after I watched The Exorcist, I would have given anything to hop on call and just talk about The Exorcist with somebody, because like reviews and seeing what people think of one thing, but like open discussion is the exact reason why I wanted to do this show, and that's exactly the reason. I think that's a very interesting. Again, would never saw this movie without it.
You can also just message us to jump on call, Cody. We're available. I want to talk to Exorcist with you.
I don't like talking to you. Yeah, you just guilted me into being on the show. All right, so my second favorite movie I watched, we'll talk about next. And that's going to be that's good, huh?
You want scores?
Scores, yes. 2 stars for Spring, and I think that's being generous at that point. Brian,
I'm going to go last. What the hell? No, I give it 3 stars. I was digging it for the first 2/3 at least.
More power to you, Scott.
I give it 2.5, but also Deebo Samuel just went down, and I give that 0 stars.
Thanks for showing your pain in this conversation.
Just saw that too. Mark, I forgot to go to you. What's your score?
I will be the high score, and I dig this movie to hell. I hadn't seen it in a while. Glad I got the opportunity. It's 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Zach,
I'll give it a 2.
means that complete. All right, so my second favorite movie that I watched. So that's basically how I determined this. Out of Sight. Out of Sight's next.
Second favorite. Anyway.
Yeah, the one that we haven't talked about is my favorite. We'll talk about that.
We'll discuss.
Right?
Not counting Night of the Hunter, because that was my pick. But the first one all these were new watches that I have not seen before. The last one, Paper Moon, when we talk about it, I'm in love with that movie. But we'll talk about this one. Out of Sight, and they're real close. They're absolutely real close because this movie is fucking awesome too. Brian, you can start by what I know why you kind of talked about why you brought it up, but yeah.
Well, I mean, because like I said before, I think it is one of his more overlooked movies because people know Soderbergh for his either his Oscar stuff like Traffic and Aaron Brockovich, or they like his Ocean's movies or some of the more recent things like Logan Lucky and things like that. And this is one that I think probably just because of its age, at least in our community, a lot of people were probably too young maybe when this one came out in 1998, just missed it, or just some people see Jennifer Lopez like, yeah, I'm not going to go watch Jennifer Lopez movie, things like that. But honestly, I think I've said before, I think this is for everyone involved in this movie, this is like their best film, in my opinion. I think this is Soderbergh's best film. I think this is probably George Clooney's best film. Jennifer Lopez is actually very good in this movie. I mean, it's not even just like tolerable, but I think she plays the role very well. And right up to that last shot of the movie where she's like, where she's kind of set them up for that escape thing, and she kind of just gives that little smirk. It just the little things like that. I think that she did very well, and a lot of that's probably Soderbergh being a good director working with her. But yeah, this is a movie that I just think just oozes cool. I mean, everything about it. I mean, if you like Ocean's 11, I think you'll really love this kind of thing. Just the way people interact, the dialogue between them, and just the look of the movie, I think is phenomenal because Soderbergh not only is already a great director, but I just love the way he uses things like color. He has he purposely used a different color palette for every city. In every setting, like in Miami, it's got kind of this kind of the hot kind of orange color. When they're in Detroit, it's like this gunmetal blue, and even just to distinguish time periods, because like when they're in Lompoc prison versus Glades, they're 2 years apart, but he uses like a different color palette, so you always know where you are, even though he's jumping around in time. And I just think he's such a great director, and I think this is a very overlooked film.
I couldn't agree more. I played like one trivia match, I think last year or something, and I was given Jennifer Lopez movies. And this is one of the movies I didn't watch. And it probably is the one that I regret the most because it's a very me movie. What I will say is expectations. What you said was perfect. I thought Jennifer Lopez, that I'm not the biggest fan of J-Lo in movies normally. I don't think she's that great. But this movie is, if you see like one of these movies that she's really good in, you change your whole opinion like on her as an actress. It's just the source material is what she chooses to do. Because this one is actually brilliant, and I like some of Steven Soderbergh's movie. I'm not like obsessed like some people like with some of his work, basically Jake or Michael. But like I love the Oceans. I love, but I also dislike some of his movies. So I was hesitant. The more and more I watch Clooney, the more and more I think like he is one of the most brilliant like actors that has ever. he's got charisma that's just doesn't like that some actors wish they could have. Like he's able to sell like anything on screen and do such an amazing job at it. So overall, Mark and Zach and Scott, what were your initial thoughts? Who has seen this movie prior to this? 50-50. You've seen it at some point, but not recall much. Okay.
Technically prior to this, but we'll talk about that.
Like a week before. Yeah.
A day before.
Day before.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. That's interesting.
This movie's in my top 100 also. I love it. Strangely enough, Brian has picked movies that I love on both of the episodes that we talked about because he picked RRR on the other episode. Even though Brian and I feel like would not usually agree on stuff. But anyway, yeah. This is my favorite Soderbergh film, and I am somebody who is a big Soderbergh fan. He just makes it look so easy, I think, in almost everything he does, and there's no this movie is certainly no exception. It's just so breezy and fun and, like I said, effortless. Just that very first scene of Clooney walking in there and robbing the bank without nothing, with just talking. He just charms his way into it, and it's amazing. Although he doesn't get away, obviously, but he's that close. But and then that scene opening the film, and then like Ryan was saying, I absolutely love the ending too, like of you realizing that she set him up with the person who's broken out of prison 20 times, and so she knows exactly what she's doing. Like, it's just from that opening scene to that ending scene, it's just like everything is just so fun and clever. But also, this is why I'm interested to hear Zach's take, because I know he loves sexy movies, and this is like one of the sexiest movies. Like, let's just say it. Jennifer Lopez wearing that Miami Dolphins cutoff jersey. I mean, come on. And that first scene of her and Clooney in the trunk together, that not to spoil anything, but you will hear me talk about that on Top 100 Scenes coming up on YLS. That I could watch that scene forever. Just the dialogue is great. Scott Frank is, I think, a great screenwriter, and he's obviously working from great source material to begin with Elmore Leonard.
Stuff,
having written the book, but he makes that dialogue just like sing, and the actors do as well. I mean, everyone. Soderbergh always has great supporting cast too. So the Steve Zahns and Don Cheadle and Ving Rhames and everybody are just a delight. Samuel L. Jackson being the guy at the end is so random too, but
especially makes it weird with him and Ving Rhames because because of Ray Nicolette, it's actually in the same world as Jackie Brown.
Yeah. But anyway, I absolutely love this movie. I have very few bad things to say about it. Again, I think it's possibly Soderbergh's best and just effortlessly cool and badass.
Yes, I watched this the day before we picked movies, so it was like serendipity. This was always something that I knew I would love, and for some reason just never put on. And finally got myself to do it right before we could talk about it. And I think because I was led to believe this is like the sexiest movie ever, and I am a George Clooney fan. That's why I'm like, this could be a top one ever. I will say this could be just like false expectations. I did expect this movie just to be like sex for 90 minutes, which I would say it's not. I think
maybe a prison sex. I don't know.
So I feel a little underwhelmed. I had to put my shirt back on a half hour into the movie. But I do say that the trunk scene is like a top tier sexy scene, just by proximity and by not having sex. I feel like that's what this movie does really well. Is there's a couple things of insinuation that makes things so much cooler. So that's like insinuated sex that makes it cool. The robbery is insinuated like violence, but there's no violence. I'm a big fan of anti-violent bank robberies. Old Man Gun does that, which is a movie I love so much. I just find that like the slickest way to get it done. I think that's a real interesting insight into the movie.
Well, I was muted a second ago, so it was a good thing I remember to take that off. I'm glad I wasn't the first one to like kind of drool over Jennifer Lopez. I mean, we all kind of brought it up that 90s.
Yeah, it's valid. It's valid.
I mean,
And Clooney too. I mean, obviously he looks great as well. To be fair,
I mean, yeah, but who cares? But
lick that shit up.
but yeah, I mean, what was funny, kind of similar to Zach. I was just kind of doing some work, and I had Out of Sight on in the background like a week before we picked movies. It was just kind of a happy coincidence I had seen. It was a movie I'd honestly kept mixing up with Peacemaker. I don't know why. I could not even kind of close to the same film, but I got them mixed up. But yeah, I mean, it had been on my list for a while just because it was Soderbergh. I've been trying to watch more Soderbergh and Clooney. I mean it, and yeah, I kind of echo a lot of the same thing. It is just a really neat movie to watch. I think what's kind of strikes to me is that it feels like it kind of sets up Clooney's career and just kind of the character he would more or less be known for probably the ongoing years, just because I think it was like a year or two before ago he did like From Dusk Till Dawn, and it almost feels like it's almost close we get to that, and then no, Out of Sight comes out and like no, this is the Clooney, and that he essentially is playing Danny Ocean before Danny Ocean, just a less successful Danny Ocean.
One thing I do want to say is I think you definitely see him like laying the groundwork for Oceans, for Logan Lucky, for all the sort of like caper movies he does in a way. Because one thing I love about all this is like there's kind of a lack of suspense, honestly. Like you never really fear in the Oceans movies, for example, that they're not going to pull it off, right? It's not like there's really not that many moments where you think they're not going to get away with it. It's really just about the pleasure and enjoyability of watching all of the parts fall into place. And I feel like there is some of that in this movie too, where it's like Jack Foley and Karen Sisco are like opposed to each other, and there's tension that results from that. But also, you kind of always know where it's going to go ultimately, and it's just kind of fun to watch the journey play out up until, like I said, that final moment when what you've been expecting, clicks into place in a satisfying way.
Yeah, Soderbergh's not about the mystery of anything. He's about the ride. He wants to create the funnest ride possible.
I mean, that's just it. This could have been, they could have turned this into a heist film like the Oceans or something like that, or even like the robbery at the end, which, obviously Jack Foley, Clooney's character is, wants to do things without violence and stuff, but he's, Don Cheadle, who by the way is the unsung hero. Him and Steve Zahn I love in this movie. Albert Brooks too, perfectly cast. But when they're doing this robbery, they're, he's like, man, they're going to rape that woman and probably him too, and he doesn't want to let that happen. And so he goes back. And I kind of love that. That's kind of the main conflict of the movie is actually, him against these other crew, at least at the end it is. And, but the thing is, they're so incompetent. It's like they show up at the house. Next thing you know, they're shopping. Like Don Cheadle's looking at suits. White Boy Bob is pulling steaks out of the freezer and stuff. And then when, of course, when he runs up the stairs and shoots himself in the face, it's just it's just funny because the dichotomy is like, oh, these are these violent guys, you're going to face off against, and they're just bumbling idiots. So
what's special about Clooney, and I am stealing this a little bit from an interview I read a little bit, is he did an interview recently where he said the secret to playing like an idiot, like he did in Burn After Reading or No Brother Art Thou, like in the Coen Brothers movies, is that you always think you're the smartest person in the room, even when you're like nowhere near it. Is that he plays both sides of that. Like he can play the person that thinks he's the smartest in the room, but is a jackass, or he can actually play the smartest person in the room, which he does in Oceans, which he does in this. And that's a fine line to cross over. And I think that's what makes him a really special, movie star, is because that's a very, charismatic line to jump across.
Well, he plays smart so well because like there's scenes like when he's first in the bank and trying to figure out how he's going to rob it, what he's going to say, or when he's sitting in the yard at the prison and he's watching, he realizes that they've moved up the date and things like that. It's just without even talking, just watching him watch people, he just portrays like this intelligence.
Yeah, but he'll also have moments where, they're getting out of the hotel and he's going down the elevator and he sees J-Lo and he's like, and he just waves like he has no idea what to do. Like it was a complete foil to his plan. Yeah. He's like, I have no counter to this.
That's what J-Lo does to you.
Yeah. He's also just
I mean, that's true. I mean, that's what I said about Clooney. I think Clooney is like one of the he gets a lot of appreciation from a lot of people, but again, even from me, sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's a George Clooney movie, but he's super good in most movies, and this one you could definitely you could see how Scott said he was laying the groundwork for like a Danny Ocean stuff, but like be able to get that. I love the dynamic between him and J Lo throughout this entire movie. Again, I'm pretty critical of J Lo's acting most times. You know, of the bad ones, there's definitely deserving, but I think in this movie, this is one that just never knew where it was going, and I wouldn't say that I was dumb and didn't pick it up, but like what Brian was saying with like how he is able to like do the color palettes and like make everything seem like it would never was a confusing time for like somebody that wasn't like, oh yeah, well it's orange because that's Miami, but I'm just like, oh, these storylines are still meeting out because now looking back on it, it was because of how attention to detail he was with making the movie.
You know who else uses color palettes to portray different time periods in a movie?
Yeah.
Greta Gerwig did it in Little Women. Just sorry, of course, I had to bring that up. Anyway,
Since
since you were
complimenting
complimenting it, Cody, I'm sure you felt the same way when Greta Gerwig did it.
I never said anything bad about her, did I?
Lady Bird.
Well, Lady Bird, yes.
I mean that's just garbage. That's a garbage film. But Little Women, I gave 4 stars, so I stand with that. There was not a lot that just didn't work for me in this movie, to be honest with you. I felt the entire time like it was just like we're calling it was the later one that I watched. I watched this way too early, but overall, like the entire time this movie, like I love the ending of this movie. I think the ending of it is brilliant, like how it comes out. Because again, certain movies could make it feel like he escapes with her and blah blah blah, and she's like. She just shoots him in the knee.
Part of me wishes I could have seen that sequel with like Samuel Jackson and George Clooney on the run, like fled, just like chained up and running across the country. That'd been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else we want to talk about outside?
Ving Rhames, great sidekick of all time. Like between this and Mission Impossible,
great at putting groceries in the car too. Like,
maybe we didn't talk enough. We talked a lot about George Clooney, so we were not maybe give enough credit to Jennifer Lopez, who also is just steaming off the screen.
I don't think that's true at all. Like we gave a lot.
We definitely gave her due.
Yeah. This is unpopular. I don't know. This should be. If there's a lot of stands, I think the one thing I don't like Steve Zahn, like as an actor, like how he got in Hollywood is still one of the most impressive things for me. Because they need a bubbler in it, but he annoys me when he's on screen most times.
Well, but he's supposed to. Like,
I know.
He plays that
Believe
role
me, I know, but I want somebody else to annoy me. Like I don't want it to be him anymore.
Caleb Boatman.
Yes.
It's just unfortunate that that's like his bit, because he's also kind of that guy that thing you do, the guy that's a little too strong, a little too much energy coming on to you. But I think that's purposeful, and I think he's great at it. So,
I mean, they gave him sunglasses to wear at night. So, I mean, come on.
I'll throw them glasses off with your head attached to them. I like that one. Okay. Overall scores for this movie. Go to Brian first.
For me, this is 5 stars.
Scott.
It rocks. 5 stars.
Zach.
9 out of 10. 4.5.
Mark.
It made me be that guy. Well, I mean, no, not that guy. Like, just
1.5. No.
The guy that likes spring more than buys 100 outside.
This is not your list. You cannot like something. It's fine.
I like this movie. I do like this movie quite a bit. But to me, it doesn't have like the X factor of some of Soderbergh's other films. Give it 3 out of 5. 3.5. 3.5 out of 4. Out of 5. Why am I saying 3.5 out of 5?
Because you're so
scared. I'm 4.5. I'm 4.5. I think this movie was awesome. Great time. And we will finish our night with a movie that I don't know if even Zach can lead into it because he didn't watch it prior to this movie, but it's Paper Moon. Zach, I kind of want your backstory. Like, why did you decide on picking this? Like, I know you said there was positive stuff.
Started with the letter P. Is that going to be the reason?
You don't want the backstory of this. It's a very obsessive way of how I create the next movies I'm going to watch. I'm like, if I'm going to do the show, I'm going to do a movie that's on my deck, which my deck is 20 movies I'm going to watch, and I rotate every 4 movies, one's to watch next. And it was on a list, and I'm like, which one's going to appeal to the chat the best? And I'm like, Paper Moon. It seems like it has a great eye within our community. I know like Boatman's a fan, and other people are fans. It seems like it's a con man thing, which I think is super acceptable to a lot of us as well. It's something my mom has been begging me to watch for a long time. My mom's a big movie fan. She loves Paper Moon. So I can appease her as well. We can invite her onto this chat.
This one I'm interested because I don't know where everybody's going to sit. I didn't know this movie existed, to be honest with you. Since I'm always around a Kingsman in one direction or in another, I know that the person won an Oscar for this role and being youngest. Like I know that stuff always pops in, but overall did not know much about the overall movie. So I went in completely blind. What did everybody else know about Paper Moon before Zach dropped in the chat?
I mean, I knew about the same as you did. Youngest actress to win an Oscar. I'll be honest. Like I think probably of the list that we got, this is probably the one that I was most tepid towards. I was like, I mean, I heard about it, probably okay. Like my expectations were kind of low going into it.
That's fair.
Yeah, I kind of just
Brian?
knew the basic data points as well. That won the Oscar for Tatum O'Neal, Peter Bogdanovich. It's a con man caper type movie. Didn't really know more than that.
You had to know a little bit about like the father-daughter aspect of it too.
Yeah. No, of course I knew Ryan O'Neal's in it as well.
I didn't even know that much. I knew the name. I've heard of the title. I've seen the cover because I worked in a video store, so I had it there. But I like as much as I knew Tatum O'Neal had won an Oscar, I didn't even realize it was for this movie because I didn't know what movie it's for because I'm not a data whore. I don't just study Oscars and things like that. So honestly, this is the one movie I hadn't seen yet, and I knew really next to nothing going into it.
Perfect. Okay, so Zach, thoughts on the movie after seeing it for the first time?
Perfect, absolutely delightful, really funny, has the right amount of plot when it decides it wants to have plot. The kid, I will say the chemistry that you get from being a father-daughter is really felt. It's a hard thing to say because I think it's a really horrible relationship in real life. I don't know, very complicated figure. But you can tell how they play off each other with such realness. Ryan O'Neal is an actor that I've been thinking about between this and like Barry Lyndon, which is the only two I've seen, is he has this movie star, but there's always this level of like fakeness to him. He's like, his voice is a little weaker than it should be. His charm is a little more off than it should be. And I think it works perfectly in these kind of con men, people who are trying to fake their way through life, which is this and Barry Lyndon as well. And so I think he's perfect for the role, but maybe can't pull up like an out of sight smartest person in the room thing because he's not. He's a nitwit, and that's what he does best. And Tatum O'Neal kind of, between this and Bad News Bears made a deal to be the bad, tough mouthed little girl. And I don't know, it's great. It's a road trip movie. You get a bunch of little kind of mini stories throughout our episode. It's a little episodic, little episodes throughout that are all very interesting. You meet fun people. You get oh my gosh, why am I blanking her name?
Madeline Kahn.
Madeline Kahn, thank you. Madeline Kahn, one of the all-time comedy greats who I adore. She gets to come in and just like steal the show for a little bit and has some of the funniest moments throughout. You get a great climatic ending. The bootlegging stuff is very exciting, very good, and just nice walk off of the sunset and continue it off. Ending. They fought. It's one of those kind of found family movies. They found each other in their own messed up way. They'll continue. It's just an absolute delight, easy watch of a movie, I think. And one more thing is comedies, especially now, like kind of get crap for not looking great. Like they don't put a lot of care into camera work. This is one of the best looking, best shot comedies like you could think. The use of the camera, the angles he uses, it just looks beautiful throughout.
I love this movie. I think it's definitely the father-daughter relationship that like how they're able to like get together, and how basically how the whole movie starts, and how he ends up like getting she like basically owns him and like tells him what's going to happen and where it's going to go. Um, how smart the dialogue is in this movie, I think, is really where they're able to achieve stuff. I think the whole like scene inside the hotel, where she's basically setting up the other to get the woman out of this picture by sleeping with another man and making him ticked off and leave the hotel. I love the cons they run throughout the whole Bible thing. I think is brilliant where they started. Like he pulls up to that lady's house and she's got like 7 kids and husband just died, and he's like, they paid already, like, let's move along, dad. And then the next one just screams out the high price and just knows he can get it for it. Like, it just, I think Tatum O'Neal is like so great in this performance as a 10-year-old. Like, that's why like everybody says like we should have a kid actor award. I've always been like against that, because they are, then this movie is a perfect example. They can hold their own if they're in the right sort of like material, and she kills this movie. It gets a little at the end, a little cartoonish, a little goofy, but I was still on board with it the entire time. I enjoyed it throughout. I wanted the story kind of to continue. I enjoyed the dynamic so much. I'm interested to see what everybody else feels. What did you guys feel about the movie?
I was a little disappointed with it. I found it well put together, well performed, entertaining, but this whole delightful, charming, like quality that everyone seems to say was like just out of reach for me. Like, and I think part of the problem is I think Ryan O'Neal's character is like kind of an ass, and like the Bible scheme in particular, I found that kind of despicable, honestly, what they're doing there. Like, I understand the whole like economic, like, oh well, this they have 7 children, so we're not going to do it to them or whatever. But like you were talking about, they're going up to these people whose husbands have just died. We are in a wartime, period, depression era, presumably, when people are struggling, and we're just taking advantage of what seem to be perfectly nice people. Even the like rich lady or whatever seems to be like a perfectly nice person. And yeah, okay, maybe she's not going to miss the $25 or whatever that much. But for me, I see that I'm like, okay, this kind of makes me uncomfortable. I want him to suffer some sort of consequences. And then he does. He does, but at the end of the movie, I'm like, okay, great. He suffered consequences. But then it's like, okay, well, you still owe me the $200. So let's get back on the road and let's go do some more schemes together. And I was like, okay, but like I want him to have learned something, because she's saying the whole time, like, we need to be more about helping people. Like she clearly demonstrates a, understanding of kindness, of some sort of compassion, of empathy. But I feel like it still hasn't necessarily rubbed off on him at the end, even after all he's been through.
I think it does.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
It's because it's a sign of less selfishness. Like he's letting someone else into his life. He's not a one-man show anymore. So he's taking in the ideas of another.
Perhaps, but for me, because of that, the parts of the movie I enjoyed the most were where she is like trying to get him, basically, when she's with Imogene, right? The who's the servant, I guess, of Madeline Kahn's character, and like they're scheming and they're doing the hotel and everything that happens there. I found all that stuff really fun, because I was like, yeah, I want him to get some. But there was just like something slightly out of reach for me. Comedy, I struggle sometimes. I didn't like laugh a ton during this movie. And so that was probably holding me back a little bit. So like, I'm not going to begrudge anyone for liking it, because I get it. Like, and I get like, I recognize it as like, this is clearly like this community type of movie for sure. Like I can totally see that. But it just like there was something about it that didn't sit right with me in the beginning, and I don't feel like that it was fully corrected in the way that I wanted it to be in the end.
But yeah, like because I was kind of going through it. I was kind of feeling somewhat the same way as Scott, and then kind of as the movie went along, Like just kind of every con they went through, it slowly won me over. And honestly, probably other than mine is probably my favorite movie I saw on this list. I just kind of slowly fell in love with the chemistry of like both Ryan and Tatum O'Neal. I kind of like Brian. I was sort of an idiot. I got 30 minutes in the movie like Ryan O'Neal, Tatum O'Neal. Oh, they're father and daughter. Like I was the dumb guy that didn't realize that they like 30 minutes in. But I mean, I will say like he is changed by the end of the movie. Like he doesn't, because he gets the shit kicked out of him, and then he looks at her and he's like, I don't want, and he kind of makes that decision in his head. I don't want her to be caught up into this. He also decides, I'm also not going to walk her to the door. I'm not going to try and con this aunt out of more money. Like he doesn't. He doesn't.
But then why do they set off presumably on more of the same type of adventures that they've been having throughout the entire movie?
Because they want to be with one another. That's a choice that they make.
That's great. But what they're going to be doing is still like.
I like that you think that's the problematic issue, not that him taking a girl from her mom's funeral to try and sell her for money. That's much more of a bigger issue. So I think that makes him okay, because he starts off like worse. He's not a likable guy, but he still is charming and enjoyable. But you're not supposed to think he's this outstanding.
He didn't take the girl; they kind of pushed her on him. So.
I feel like at least you know that he's going to do right by her, because at the end of the day, she's the first thought in his head. He's going to think about her from now.
What is he teaching her ultimately?
To make your way in this world anyway. You know how
to live in those streets. She's about to be a Wall Street broker and be in the billion.
Oh yeah,
who would have thought?
The pillars of morality, Wall Street brokers. Yeah.
She'll be Jordana Belfort.
Yeah. So for me, when you first picked the movie, and I looked to see exactly what it was, I'm like, okay, it's a 70s movie about 30s Depression era. And then like in Ryan O'Neal and people who don't have anything against him, but nobody jumps out at me. Someone's like, oh, I'm just gonna suffer through this movie.
I think that you just made assumptions.
I actually ended up quite enjoying it. I think when it first started out and it had like the old black and white, old Paramount logo, things like that, I thought it immediately kind of it worked. Like whereas I think when Bogdanovich did Last Picture Show, I think in my opinion it's kind of black and white for no reason except just to shoot in black and white. I feel like this one, it really helped kind of set the movie. I think if it had been like in full color and stuff, it would have had a very different feel to it. Whereas this kind of felt like one of those old road comedies, whether it be, it happened one night or anything, some of the older things kind of had that road movie old feel to it. So I thought that really worked for this. And then the relationship between them obviously was great. While I feel Tatum O'Neal, I think did a good job. I don't think it was anything Oscar worthy. I think precocious doesn't necessarily mean, great acting ability. I guess it was a low threshold for acting Oscars in 73. Cause I mean, it was her and then Madeline Kahn getting a nomination too. I enjoyed Madeline Kahn, but neither one of those performances to me is Oscar worthy, but that's just my opinion.
Well, and Madeline Kahn, like apparently was like, no, Tatum O'Neal should have won for best lead actress and I should have won for best supporting actress.
It's kind of true.
But at the same time, she's probably trying to make room for herself. Yeah.
I don't.
I will say I showed my age when the guy who plays the bootlegger and his brother, the cop, showed up. John Hillerman. I immediately go, "Hey, that's Higgins from Magnum PI." But that's just me because I'm old. So.
I mean, even speaking of Tatum O'Neal, she was also up against Linda Blair in The Exorcist the exact same year. Ooh. So they both were nominated. So. Which is crazy.
Goated performances, yeah.
So both just signaling the tragedy of being a young Hollywood star.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Both had them. Overall, like this movie, again, I think it's the father son. The only part that gets really weird for me, it's the one part that why do we have to do that? And there's a lot of weird parts. But when they drive that car off the road and they meet this old hillbilly guy outside, like, and you're going to trade the car for him. And they say, not going to trade. And the one thing to get him to go, hell yeah, I'll wrestle you. oh, hot damn! And then there's a wrestle match. It was so weird.
Disrespectful portrayal of my people, I just have to say.
There's no indication.
I would say accurate.
And unless I missed something, there's no indication that Ryan O'Neal has this backstory of like he was like a successful school wrestler or something. It's like, why would he be able to pick up Randy Quaid? He was like twice his size.
It was Randy Quaid too, which made me just die on that thing. But then them pushing it again. No, but overall, the whole overall con. The lawyer doesn't like it because they're breaking the law, but the rest of us found it, just like,
I'm
just
a
another one
attorney, okay? I would defend these people, but that doesn't mean I have to like what they're doing.
Well, you just saw Tatum O'Neal as a future client from you if they don't get out of this life of crime.
George Clooney robbing banks and holding up houses.
Oh, you're okay with them? Yeah, you're
taking $25 to sell a Bible. How dare he?
Taking advantage of people who,
Scott,
have just been through.
This is how I afforded my house. Please don't judge me.
But I think the cons. I think also the cops, like that entire scene when they're in the interrogation and basically like, we're gonna find the $650, and he starts like going through the box, and you're like, oh my god, and then Ryan like he flips out, and then she's like. He looks and you see that. Yeah.
It's some of the good like Hitchcockian use of the camera of like giving you all the information that you need to be invested in the scene, not leaving it as a mystery, but where the money is, so you can feel the suspense of they're gonna find it or not.
I just and then what was it? The idiot cop at the end was like, "Oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Oh, I need to watch. Sure, let's do all this and then run." Like, terrible idea. I thought the car, I think the overall movie, again, a movie that I probably wouldn't have discovered unless this kind of show exists, and I'm really happy about it because I don't think anything would have drove me to it. So I was really pleased with it. And again, it was a wild card for you too. You've heard positive things, but you don't know if it hits. So again, I encourage, if you're on the show and you want to be on the show, let me know.
I feel like Zach knew he was probably going to love this. Like
I knew it.
No,
but yeah,
there's still an off chance.
Something that might have been mixed upon.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to talk about with Paper Moon before we give our scores? Okay. A 4.5. I love this movie. I can't wait to revisit it too. I think it's. I talked about it with Mike Hanley the other day for a long time because I just enjoyed it. Zach, what do you give it?
10 out of 10. 5 out of 5.
There you go. We'll save Scott. Brian.
I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 out of 10 out of 5.
Yeah. Zach is the one that started us all off. Mark. The scale's out of 5, just to remind you.
I'll be better moving forward.
All right. I will give this movie a 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it a lot.
And the Bible, something. No, I'm kidding. Scott Harvey, what do you give it?
3.5. I mean, I totally get it. Like, I totally do. It's just never going to be one of my favorites for certain reasons. But it's a very well made movie.
It's a rough night for you. We understand. It's okay.
So thank you all for being on. I appreciate you all. I for the two people that were on the previous show, I think this one worked a lot better this way than the previous episode.
Yeah. It's because of me and Mark.
I think so. You guys will definitely be in the rotation to bring you back for sure. Next week's next episode. So by the time this one airs, the next one will be Monday. So you'll be seeing. The movies will be out, but we have Brian back on, me, Tim Brzakala, Jake Marangoni, and Kurt Kolakowski is on the episode. And I'll hint them. I'll just tell the movies. Won't tell you who picked them. We have Doubt, Altered States, 12 Monkeys, The Hard Way, and Bugsy will be on the roundtable next week. And then again, if you want to be on, message me. I'll create another room. Again, thanks for being on, everybody. Have a good night.